This is my Mark 1 Volkswagen Caddy.
In the last episode, we found the perfect car to use as an engine donor. We got straight into removing the 3.2 litre engine. Once the engine was out, the preparation started, cleaning the surface and painting the engine. And then we was left with a freshly painted gearbox and engine ready to be fitted into the Caddy.
In this episode, we're going to try get this into this. So before we start doing anything, I've got something planned for the extended part of the garage over here. Let's go take a look at it. So at the moment, in the extended garage, the lighting isn't the best. So I'm currently using the stand-up LED to light up the area. This part of the garage isn't for me to work on vehicles, but I still want to be able to see what I'm doing when I'm walking in here. And also, if I want to play around with the Caddy when it's stored in here, I can't really see the best. So I've come up with a good solution for that. I've bought some hexagon LEDs that will go on the roof. I'm sure you've seen loads of people that have these, but I think they look quite cool. So let me show you everything that I've bought. So these are the hexagon LEDs over here, and these ones are a border that goes around the hexagon LEDs. So hopefully when I install these onto the roof, it makes a big difference, and hopefully when I put the car back, it makes it look like a showroom. Also, me and my dad have painted the roof. I'll put a little bit of a clip here now, but hopefully painting the roof black will make it look a little bit cleaner and also contrast the roof to the lights. Okay, enough waffling, let's quickly get the LEDs installed onto the roof.
Putting the lights together was easier than I thought. It was just a case of slotting them together like a big puzzle. Once they were all built, it was time to fit the outer border and then get the hexagons fitted. Checking with the level made sure all of the lights were sitting straight as the roof is slightly slanted.
So the lights are all installed now and it's looking really bright in here, and I'm so happy with how it came out. Now it's time to start working on the Caddy. When I was removing the PD130 engine from the engine bay, I damaged some of the mounting points, like this engine mount here and that side there. And there's some marks here and there where I've damaged the paintwork. So I was thinking, do I either go down the route of respraying the whole engine bay or just touching up the damage that I've done? And I think I'm just going to go and respray the whole engine bay. I want the finish to be really nice when the engine's in, so I think that's the best route to go down. Another thing that I have to repair is on this side here, I mounted a fuel filter, so I need to drill out these nut certs and then weld up the holes. So there's a lot of work that I have to be getting on with, so I'm just going to set up a time lapse and then get straight into it.
The first job to tackle was drilling out the nut certs. These were used to hold a fuel filter for the PD130 swap. Then it was time to remove the paint around the holes so the weld could penetrate. Trust me, the welds came out better than it looks. I think I didn't remove enough paint around the holes, so the paint burned a little bit. So once them holes were all welded up, it was time to go around the engine bay and scuff up the surface so the new paint will stick. I paid a little bit more attention to the places which were damaged so they don't show through the paint. On to painting the engine. On some of the higher spots, the paint was removed, so I had to retouch these up with some primer. Once the primer was dry and sanded, I then hit it with 2 coats of base and then 3 coats of clear. let's dive into the heart of the project. After swapping out the PD130, it's been all about the 3.2 litre upgrade. I have gathered up the essentials like the clutch, flywheel, wiring, radiator, exhaust and many other parts. Now it's time to put all of the pieces of the puzzle together.
So after the long process, the engine bay has finally been resprayed. The next step is getting the engine into the engine bay. So I've got all of the parts laid out on the floor that we need for the engine swap, but the first thing that I need to do is get the flywheel bolted onto the engine and then get the new clutch installed.
I'm giving the flywheel a good clean using brake cleaner. Why? Well, clearing off any lingering oils ensures that there are no heat spots in the future. It's a simple step, but one that goes a long way in extending the life of your clutch. The first step of tightening down the flywheel is just getting all of the bolts run all the way down the thread. I then torqued it down to 30 Nm and then 60. The flywheel torque specs are 30 Nm, 60 and then an additional quarter turn. So I then marked the top of the bolts and done the extra quarter turn.
I just want to say a huge thank you to the guys over at Clutch Stop and Darkside Development. They sent over the clutch parts that we need for the 3.2 swap. Clutch Stop is the one-stop shop for clutch parts and brake parts. If you need anything for your car, I've put the link down in the description, so go and check them out.
Even though the pressure plate is brand new, it still needs a good clean over as it's shipped with some oils to stop it from rusting, and then one final clean of the flywheel before the clutch is fitted. Then it was time to snug down all of the bolts and then torque them to the spec. It's time to lower the engine down on the hoist to mate it with the gearbox. It's a critical step in the swap, so I'm just taking my time trying to line it up correctly.
When I removed the DSG gearbox from the engine, I used a little trick that I learned from the humble mechanic. Using this trick, I was able to organize and store the bolts so I knew exactly where they came from. This way, I could use these bolts for when I need to put my gearbox back on. It's good practice to check if the bolts that you're putting in are the right size. If the bolts are too long, you might cause some serious damage to the engine.
The first step that you want to do is draw a circle which represents the gearbox and then another circle that represents the starter motor. When you remove a bolt from the gearbox, for example this starter motor bolt, you want to pierce a hole in the cardboard and then push the bolt through so you know exactly where it goes and where it came from. If you happen to have a bolt that goes from the engine side into the gearbox, like this bolt over here, you'd pierce a hole and then push it through the back side of the cardboard. So when you fully remove the gearbox, you should end up with a cardboard that looks something like this. Using this little tip, you should know exactly where every bolt goes, so you don't cause any damage to your engine by putting the wrong bolt in the wrong hole. Before the engine goes into the Caddy, the driver's side engine mount needs to be bolted on. It's time. The engine's making its move. It's a defining moment in the project. With precision and care and trying our best not to scratch the new paint, we're getting this engine into position. The heart of the project is finding this new home, and guess what? It's the 3.2 from the Audi TT, and it's starting this new life in my Mark 1 Volkswagen Caddy.
After all of that, the engine's finally in. When we was putting it in, the driver's side took a little bit of wiggling to get it to line up properly. Because I don't have a leveler for the engine crane, it made it a little bit more difficult for me to get it in, but we still managed to do it. With the passenger side, it's a lot easier to line up. All I had to do was put a jack underneath the transmission and jack it up slowly until this mount went into this bracket here, and then just push the bolt through. There were some little scrapes here and there, so I've got one down here, and then I managed to take a little bit of paint off down here. And then moving on to the rear, I hit the gearbox down here. But with this type of damage, it happens all the time, so I'll just get a little bit of touch-up paint and touch the damage up. But other than that, I'm so happy that the engine's finally in now. I've got the intake manifold over here, and I just want to see how the engine looks when I put it on there. Even without the manifold, it's looking so nice, and I can't wait to see everything put together. So let's see how it's going to look with the intake manifold on. And boom, here it is. It's looking crazy. I'm so happy with how it turned out. I'm not too sure if I should respray the intake manifold. Maybe I could match it to the cream colour as well. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think I should spray it, or should I just leave it as silver? So at the moment, you could still rock the engine forward and back. The only mounts that are holding it on are the driver's side and the passenger side. You can still shake the engine like this, and it will rock forward and back. That moves us on to the next step. There are still two mounts that I need to put on the car. So there's one lower transmission mount that I need to put on, and as I went for the upgraded kit, there's one that goes along the front of the car. I just want to give a big shout out to S&P for hooking me up with the conversion kit and making this all possible. The quality of the mounts is so good, and I'm happy with how everything goes together. When I was doing some research about doing this conversion, everybody recommended for me to use S&P stuff. So now I can see why. The quality is amazing. So if any of you guys are doing an engine swap on your Volkswagen, head over to their website and they have everything that you'll need.
So the first thing to go back onto the engine is the alternator. I thought this is the best time to put it back on, as I can slightly move the engine forward and back, so it gives me the extra room to put it in. To keep the engine bay clear of all wires, I'm tucking the wire that goes from the alternator to the starter motor in the front panel. I'm just using a piece of plastic wire to pull it through. Once it's through, I can then solder the blue wire, which tells the speedo that the alternator is charging the battery. I'm trying my best this time to not scratch up the paint, so I'm taping up the chassis rails so I can install the front mount. Then it's just a case of lifting up the front reinforcement bar and sliding it into place. To keep it in position while I install the front mount, I just use 2 bolts to hold it there. With the front mount, I got a new poly bush to install, so with the squirt of WD-40, it helps it get on. Once everything was in place with the front mount, I could slightly tighten down the bolts, but still keep them loose enough so I can move everything around and then tighten them down when all of the mounts are installed. The next mount to go in is for the gearbox. I ended up jacking up the rear of the gearbox to get it in easier. The mount uses 3 bolts from the side of the gearbox. It's a bit of a shame that I had to undo these bolts because they damaged the paint, but it is what it is, and I'll touch it up later on.
After removing all of the bolts, the second part of the gearbox mount could go in. It was a little tricky, but trying my best not to damage the paint, it finally went into place. Once the hardest part was done, I could then attach the two mounts together and then do up all the bolts. Right, so that's all of the engine mounts installed onto the engine now. So if we do the shake test again, it doesn't move anywhere, so that's good. I'm a little bit gutted about the bolts, but it doesn't matter. I can touch them up and hopefully they'll look as good as new. So the next step is moving on to installing some drive shafts. So to fit the 3.2 into the Mark 1, you need custom drive shafts. I got the driver side and passenger side in the kit, and also you need 100mm axle cups to fit on the ends so it fits onto your gearbox. I've given them a little bit of a paint to make them look a little bit better, and I've got some lithium grease to go in the ends of the drive shafts. So the first thing to do is bolt up the cups to the gearbox and then get the drive shafts installed.
The transmission cups are just held in with one bolt, so I just tighten it down and it pulls it all the way in. And then it's time to move on to one of the messiest jobs ever. Filling up the drive shafts with lithium grease. For some reason, when doing this job, the grease goes everywhere. Once that messy job was out of the way, I could get the drive shafts into position and then tighten them down. Once the passenger side was done, I could just repeat the same process on the driver's side.
So now we've got the mounts and the drive shafts connected, the engine's in its final position. The drive shafts went in quite easy because I have new hubs fitted. This is the best part about doing a restoration, when you put the new parts back on the car. I need to get the radiator in so we can work on the cooling system, but I'm not too sure if I have to put the intake manifold on first. I think with this swap, everything has to go into the bay in a certain order. If I don't follow that order, it might cause a headache down the line and I'll have to take out the parts that I've already installed. So with the intake manifold, I need your help. Do you think I should spray it or keep it silver? So make sure you comment down below what you think I should do, silver or cream. There's so many different parts that I still need to install around the engine, but you'll have to wait until the next episode. If you enjoyed watching this video, don't forget to hit that like button, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Thanks a lot for watching guys, and I'll see you on the next one.